Hey guys, what's up? Regina here with the Faith-Filled Teacher, and today we are going to be talking about 10 classroom management mistakes that I hope you're not making. So let's hop right in. These are not in any particular order. I am going to save the best one for the end. So the one that I feel is the most important, I'm going to save that for last. So make sure you stick around, stay tuned. So 10 classroom management mistakes. Here we go. All right. Number one, and again, not in any particular order, you are disconnected from your students. So it is really challenging to manage your classroom well if your students don't feel like you're connected to them. So there's a quote by Rita, I can't remember her last name, and it says, "Children don't learn from teachers they don't like." And I 100% agree with that. Your students need to like you. You need to be likable. Let me put it that way. Your students, they may or may not like you, right? But you need to be likable, period. You need to be warm. You need to be loving. You need to be a person who they feel is happy to see them, happy to be at school. You need to do the little things like, "I like those sneakers," or "Your hairstyle is really nice today. How was your baseball game? How did your violin recital go?" Right? When they share these things with you, really be invested in them as people. Look out for them. Are you feeling okay today? You look like you don't feel well. Do you need to go to the nurse? Are you good? You said you had a situation last week. How is that going? Whatever the case may be. But your students sense your energy. And I've seen this with even my 1-year-old. Kids can sense the energy, I guess, if you want to put it that way, that you are giving off. And it's no different, from a baby or a toddler to elementary, middle school, high school kids. They can sense from you if you care about them, if you want to be there, all of those things. So if you are not making it a point to come across in a way that is warm, welcome, and loving so that your students feel connected to you, it's going to be really, really hard to manage your classroom when you've not done that. All right, moving right along to the next one. So the next one is your expectations are too low. So classroom management mistake number 2 is that your expectations are too low. So this is kind of something that you're going to have to evaluate on your own. But if you are expecting very little from your students in regards to their behavior, how they treat you, how they treat each other, this even goes down to their work. Are you expecting them to write their letters on the line? Are you expecting handwriting to be legible? All of those things really feed into a healthy classroom management environment. So if your expectations for your students are too low, things are going to be chaotic. It's going to be a struggle to manage your classroom and manage the things that maybe in your head you think should be happening, but in reality, you're not expecting those things to happen. So it's really important to have high expectations for your students. And this is across the board from their work down to their behavior. So having expectations that are too low can definitely be a cause for a chaotic classroom and for sure a classroom management mistake. All right. The next classroom management mistake is being inconsistent. This one is a huge one. So if you're telling your students that you want them to be on a voice level 0 in the hallway, and then they're talking in the hallway, and you don't correct the behavior, you don't give a correction, you don't get them in line, you don't make them do it over again, whatever the case may be, they're looking right at you talking, and you just let it go. You are being inconsistent. And when you are inconsistent, you are sending a message. You're sending a couple messages to your students. You're sending a message that what you say doesn't matter, that you say one thing, but you don't mean it. You're sending a message that you're weak because you're telling them one thing and you're telling them, maybe even you're giving a consequence. If you don't do this, this is going to happen. And then they do that thing and nothing happens. So you're sending a message that you're weak. And those are messages that you do not want to send to your students, okay? So being inconsistent creates for a very chaotic classroom. And, you know, it makes your students feel like they don't know what to do, because you're telling them one thing and then you're allowing them to do something else. And then the next day you're telling them, no, I want this. But then they're like, wait, yesterday you let us do that. So it just creates inconsistency and uncertainty for them. And it does not create an environment where you're going to be able to run your classroom smoothly. So the next one is definitely inconsistency. All right, moving right along, that was 3. So we're moving on to number 4, and that is not communicating your expectations to your students. So sometimes, you know, you might think that they should know what to do. They should know how to line up. They should know, you know, how to walk in the hallway. They should know how to enter the classroom. They should know during independent work time how to work independently, but never assume with your students. So you have to make sure you are communicating your expectations to them very clearly. So you need to tell them how you want the thing, what you want done, how you want it done, when you want it done. So you have to be very clear and concise with your students. Don't leave gray area. Don't leave space for them to fill in, because if you leave gaps in the communication and gaps in what they're supposed to be doing, they're going to fill that with whatever they want. Maybe what their teacher last year did, maybe what they do at home, whatever the case may be. So it's very important that you have very clear expectations for what you want your students doing, and that you communicate to them exactly how you want it done, so that they know, so that they are on the same page with you. So make sure you're communicating those expectations very clearly. All right, next one, that was number 4. Number 5 is that you are not reinforcing positive behavior. Sometimes teachers get really hyper-focused on the negative, especially if you're having a chaotic school year, things are not going well in your classroom, you're struggling with your students. It can be really easy to just focus on, they're doing this, they're doing that, you know, they're talking too much, they're not listening to me, they're not completing their work. And you start to get hyper-focused on the negative. But we all know, well, hopefully you do know, and hopefully you've gotten some training on the importance of positive to negative ratios. You want to make sure that you are not magnifying the negative behavior by calling it out, constantly correcting, but then when they do something well, you're not giving them that same energy. You're not giving them that same praise. And it's really important for your students to not only hear from you when they need to correct something, but they want to hear from you when they're doing something well, when they're exhibiting a positive behavior. So absolutely make sure that you are highlighting those positive behaviors and not allowing the negative to outweigh the positive. All right, next one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Number 6. Number 6, yes, is your pacing is too slow. So when you are teaching, it is very important to focus on the pacing of your lessons, okay? And if you're going too slow, you're giving the students too much time to take out their books. You're doing one thing and then you're waiting way too long in between that instruction and the next one. When there's too much lull in your lesson, that creates the perfect space for your students to start just doing whatever they want, to get off task, to start talking, to be disruptive. So you want to make sure that your pacing is not too fast so that you're not losing them, but also definitely not too slow. So while you're teaching your lessons, you know, you want to keep in mind the pace that you're using while you are teaching, the pace that you're using while you're giving directions. Even in the morning when you're opening your class and welcoming them, you don't want to give too much space, because when your students have that lull, they're going to fill that in with whatever they want. So don't leave those gaps. Nice perky pace. All right, that brings us to the next one, number 7, which is not being prepared to teach. Huge mistake, you guys. You need to make sure that when you go into your classroom, you know what you are doing. You should have a general idea of what you're teaching, what lesson you are going to do, what standards you're covering, what materials you are going to need. You need to have a plan for what you are teaching. So if you walk into your classroom and you have done nothing to prepare, not only are you not doing your job, but you are setting yourself up to have a miserable day. You are setting your students up to have a miserable day, and you are doing them a disservice. So you must always go into your classroom prepared to teach, because when you're standing up there flying by the seat of your pants, flying by the seat of your pants, that is not a good feeling for you, and it is not good for your students. And when you're feeling all shaky and uncomfortable and you don't know what you're going to do, it just leaves a lot of dead space. And you know what they're going to do with that dead space? They're going to fill it in with whatever they want. And this also goes along with the last one that I just said about your pacing, because if you've thought through your lesson, you know what you're going to do, you kind of rehearsed it in your head, that's going to help you keep that perky pacing, which is going to keep things flowing smoothly and eliminate those lulls and that dead space. But if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to be standing up there like, take out a piece of paper and get a pencil, and then it's a disaster. So don't do that to yourself. Do not do that to yourself. Know what you are doing when you walk into your classroom. And that doesn't mean that your lesson plan has to be picture perfect, but you need to have an idea of what you're doing. And you need to have, which I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, you need to have your routines in place, because the more routines you have in place, the more seamless things will be. So yes, you want to make sure that you definitely go into your classroom knowing what you are teaching. So let's go right into the next one, number 8. And number 8 is that you are giving off weakness. You're giving off weak signals to your students. This is definitely a huge classroom management mistake, because kids, I'm telling you, they sniff you out. They're sniffing out the weakness. They're looking to see how far they can push you. What buttons can I press? How far can we push these boundaries? And that's just the nature of kids. So if you're a parent, you have your own kids, they're just trying to figure out their little lives, figure out how to live, figure out what's going on, all that good stuff. But when your students get a sense that you're weak, they are going to push and push and push. And that's going to cause you to feel very out of control. Your classroom is going to feel chaotic. You're not going to feel confident. And being a confident teacher encompasses a lot of different things. So it can be just your stature, how you are, not your stature, but your just how you're standing in your classroom, those nonverbals, your voice, the tone of your voice, the level of your voice, how you're using your hands in your classroom. You're sending a lot of nonverbals to your students. And when you're doing things that are exuding weakness, that is going to make managing that group of students really, really challenging. So if you are a teacher, you absolutely need to have some level of confidence. No matter if you're teaching pre-K all the way up to high school or college, you have to have confidence. You have to exude confidence, because that is going to help you to be able to control that environment and have good, healthy classroom management. All right. Hopping right into the next one, number 9. Number 9, classroom management mistake is that you are not nice to your students. And you might be thinking, why would I teach and not be nice to my students? But you guys, I've seen it. I've seen many mean teachers out there. And if you've been teaching for any amount of time, you've probably seen your fair share of mean teachers too. You guys, be nice to your students. There's no reason to be demeaning, embarrassing, just moody with them, all of those things. You need to be nice. You need to be pleasant. Now, there is a time and a place to, lay down the law. But at the end of the day, you need to like kids. You need to like your job. And you need to exhibit some level of excitement and kindness when your students walk into your classroom. Because like I said earlier, if they don't like you, if they don't feel that you like them, it's going to be really hard to get them to do anything. It's going to be hard to manage your classroom. So be nice. Just be nice. All right. And that brings us to the last one, number 10, which I think is the most important. And this classroom management mistake is not having a classroom management plan. So you're planning your lessons, you know what you're teaching, you got it all laid out, your materials, your copies, everything, but have you taken the time to think about your classroom management plan? And your classroom management plan includes a whole lot of different things. How are your students entering your classroom? What do they do when they enter? What voice level do you want them entering on? Where do they turn in their work? How do they turn in their work? What is your restroom procedure as a class? What's your restroom procedure if they need to go individually? Where do they get materials? Where do they store their materials? How do they pack up to leave? How are you dismissing them? What are you doing when you need to get their attention? Like, there's so many things involved in a classroom management plan. And if you haven't taken the time to think through all of those aspects, it's a huge mistake. It is a huge mistake. It's kind of like, think about like Chick-fil-A, right? If you've gotten a Chick-fil-A, you know that when you come to the restaurant in the drive-through, they're gonna have their employees out there. They've got the little iPads, they've got their communication device to communicate within the store. They're taking your order, they're watching your car, seeing if you need to move forward, all of that stuff. They've got that business running like a well-oiled machine because they've taken the time to put some systems and structures in place so that things run smoothly. So that's just like your classroom management plan. You have to put those systems and structures in place in order to make sure that things run smoothly. And when you have a time in your day where something isn't quite going how you would like it to go, I challenge you to ask yourself, what system and what structure do I have in place for that time of the day so that things are running smoothly? So those are my 10 classroom management mistakes. If you're making any of those mistakes, it's okay, because nobody's perfect. Nobody starts off perfect. I look back on my early days of teaching and I've definitely grown and come a long way in 19 years, so if you can think of any other classroom management mistakes that you would like to add, I would love for you to add those in the comments. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Until next time, peace, love, and blessings. Bye.